Well, we're here today with Jim and Tom from The Call, one of my favorite bands from the 80s. And we were just talking before we started. This interview conversation got put together by a mutual friend of ours, Todd Walsh, who a lot of you may know through the Diamondbacks and the Coyotes, and as a Arizona broadcaster, a sports broadcaster, a great guy. I've known him about, never mind how long I've known him. But we got together as friends over our love of The Call. And unfortunately, hard to believe I was looking up, that was 14 years ago that we lost Michael. And but we're here with Jim and Tom from The Call. And I never thought I'd be talking to you guys about more call music. So how did this project get together? And obviously it's with Michael's vocals as well.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
Dickie.
Jim. Oh,
Yeah,
well, the way this happened,
you're kind of the ringleader of this thing.
the way this kind of happened was about 3 or 4 years ago. I got a call from Scott in Oklahoma, and he said that they were going to be inducting us into the Oklahoma Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And so I wanted to see if I could get the band together to go and play this gig. And we couldn't really, it was kind of late in the day. We couldn't really organize that. But I got in touch with my friend Ralph Patlin, who lives in Arizona. And he had worked on a couple of songs that we had done in the early 90s. Jim had left the band to go get married. And Ralph, who was my guitar tech, jumped in as a second guitar, and we were goofing around on some songs. Try to see what we would sound like as a two guitar, bass, and drums band rather than a keyboard, guitar, bass, drums band. And we we did about 4 or 5 songs, and then we kind of dropped it because there was some time went by. We had changed labels and did this and that, and so these songs kind of got lost. And so I went into my closet, which I do occasionally, and I have boxes of CDs and tapes. And I found a couple of these songs, and I listened to them. I said, "Gosh, these things are really great." And Ralph, who lives in Arizona, who works at a studio, I said, "Do you want to maybe mess around with one of these and see if we could, bring it back to life?" So as this kind of time went on, I found a few more songs, and I said, "Geez, I have 4 or 5 songs here. Maybe we should think about putting out an album or something." So I got in touch with my band, with Scott and Jimmy, and they were all excited about it. They listened to a couple of these songs, got excited. So we just started gathering songs. Scott had some old stuff from the 70s. Jim had this fantastic song from the 80s, and then these other songs from the 90s. And it turned out we had 11 of these songs that they didn't go on albums because they either didn't fit in with the album at the time, or we always had 1 or 2 songs left over that didn't make a record. And these were songs that just got lost. So they span from 1979 to the early 90s, I guess, right into the mid 90s. And so you get kind of a you get a whole retrospect of kind
You
of how
get 30 years.
progressed through these years. And there's 3 songs on there that we had actually done as a demo that got us our first record deal. And
Which
so
ones were those?
that was geez, I don't have my
Was that
titles
beaten?
right here
Was
with
that
me.
Dickie? Was it beaten at your own game?
Beating at Your Own Game, Christine,
Christine.
and another one.
What's the other one?
I should have this album cover in front of me. Let me get it.
I know. I'm like, I don't have anything in
Well,
front of me. Hello.
So Jim, in the meantime, while he's looking for that, what was going back and re-listening to this stuff? Did it bring back memories of when you were originally recording it? Is it like a time machine for you guys?
Well, yes and no. It was interesting. My perspective was different because the only song that I actually played on out of these 11 was the one that was a song that didn't go on the Into the Woods album. a song called "Welcome to My World," and
Which
that
is
was
the
one
first
that,
song you're releasing, right?
yeah, that was one that
Mhm.
Michael and I had written together. And I remembered when we got it back from Elektra, when they gave us back our rights to the masters for Into the Woods and Reconciled. And I had kind of forgotten about the song. And when I heard it, I realized, oh yeah, like I had used it in a movie trailer track that I did. I'd used the melody because I always liked it, but otherwise I sort of forgot that we recorded it. And when I heard it, I realized that part of the reason I was glad it didn't go on the record at the time was I never felt like it was done. It kind of felt sort of underproduced or sort of one-dimensional. It was just sort of this one hook that we all were playing, and it just didn't have like the counter parts and stuff. And so when I heard that track, I thought, man, if we can go back in the studio and add the parts that are missing, I thought it's going to sound done. And then sure enough, that's what happened. And I couldn't have been happier with, finding not only finding out about a song that I'd forgotten about, but having it have a second chance at kind of at life. And when we added the guitars and the keyboards to it, it really did come to life. But the other songs, I had never heard the other songs, and I didn't play on them. So, I mean, I wasn't in the band when they did the early demos, and I wasn't in the band when they did the songs after I left, obviously. So for me, it was really fun to hear these songs and not have had any experience with them. Like for me, they were completely brand new. And and I was just as blown away as any Call fan would be when I heard them. I was like, man, these songs are fantastic. And there's Michael's voice is just booming away. And the early stuff, his whole vocal delivery was super animated and very different, and really all the songs are catchy. And I started having this funny kind of conspiracy theory that I always felt like Michael was not sure that he wanted to have a hit record, like a huge hit record. And it was almost like these songs were so good that he was like, they're too good. Let's do something edgier, for the real album. And it's almost like these 11 songs are like it's almost like they're all singles. Like they're all catchy. They all have super hooks in them, and it's a phenomenal bunch of songs. I mean, to come out of nowhere and because a lot of times people put out songs that they have that are, their lost tapes or whatever, the stuff that didn't go on the records, and they're not that good. And that's the reason why they didn't go on the records, was they weren't that good. And that just wasn't the case with any of these songs. So it's a, I'm only biased on the one song, and the other 10 I'm just a fan, and felt lucky to get to play on them. Getting to play along with Garth Hudson again is something I never would have thought in a million years that I'd have a chance to do. And Beautiful Lie, I got to add saxophones to it, and I'm in the studio playing my saxophone, and I'm listening to Garth playing the keyboard, the organ, and I'm thinking, man, I'm playing with Garth Hudson right now. Like this is, how is this possible? Like this is crazy.
Well, the
So yeah, it was
technology
just,
nowadays today is making this stuff possible, which 30
yeah.
years ago you could do it, but it would have been a lot more challenging, I would think.
And these songs came off of just like we had put together the Live Under the Red Moon album at the end of the 90s. This was just a bunch of live stuff that I had on cassettes. And so when you say the technology got there, I mean, that's really how much the technology advanced, that you could take an old cassette from
Wow.
40 years ago and bring it in the studio and bring it to life. And that was one of the, really fun things for Jim, because when I was putting this thing together, I go, Jim, how'd you like to come down and just sit in with all of these 10 songs that you've probably never heard before and jam with them? And in fact, that's really
Mhm.
what he got to do. And it was really cool sitting there watching him put, keyboards on all this stuff.
What was it like for you, Tom, hearing all these songs again? I mean, obviously it had to bring back a lot of memories.
Well, it did. One of the things, and those songs that I was trying to remember, When You Can't Find Love, Christine, and what was the other one?
Eating at your own game.
Eating at Your Own Game. These in the late 70s, what you did when you were trying to get some sort of a record deal is you'd go in the studio and take your best songs and record them, and then try to have a little cassette, send it. Well, I know some guy in LA, that might get to somebody. Everybody was doing that around here. And I think what we were doing is we were just overproducing these things too much. We tried to make it like, here it is, put it on a record, when in fact, all they were going to do is go, hey, that's a good song. If we sign you, we're going to come in and you're going to do it all again. So we did a really stripped down version of these three songs, meaning it was just a guitar, bass, drums, and Michael singing. And here's the song. And after 10 years of sending stuff to LA and trying to get a deal, those three songs, all stripped down, were the ones that got us our deal with Polygram Mercury and got us on our way. But they were really fun for Jim in the fact that they were so stark that he could just step in and kind of do whatever he wanted, which he did, and made them all sound great.
Well, when I heard Welcome to My World for the first time, I went, yeah, that's the call. Like it was like, wow. It was like stepping into a time machine. And it's like, I listen to the albums a lot and I have a lot of fun. It brings me back to a certain time, but to hear new stuff,
yeah,
that I've never heard before, it was a total treat. And then when I got to hear the whole album, and I tell you, there was a couple songs on there that really stood out to me that like became kind of favorites. And they were a little bit different sounding, in my opinion, what the public would expect. A Beautiful Lie.
yeah.
Mhm.
I really like that. It's almost his vocals is that him singing?
Yeah.
It sounds completely like a different vocal style for him. On
That's
that
the Okie. That's the Okie bean right there.
Well, and
Well,
then
you heard the one Time in a Beer Bottle, right? That's
well,
where he really put on his Okie.
well, that was the other song. It was like, wow, this isn't commercial country. This is real barroom jukebox country. And
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I both Scotty and Michael are from Oklahoma, and I met them out here in California, and that's where we started our band here in Santa Cruz, California. And I never really heard the Okie in their voices much. They didn't have big drawls or anything. But as soon as we went on the road for the first time and we crossed over the Oklahoma borderline, all of a sudden, oh my God, the country boys are here.
The Okie
So it
zone.
was pretty easy for them to slide into that drawl.
it just comes back. My wife is from Long Island. I never hear that accent unless she's angry, and then I hear the accent come out, and it's like who are you? So where could people get the album? Is it
Ask
available
Jimmy
yet,
about
or is it
this
coming out?
because yeah,
Well,
it's
right now it's just a Kickstarter.
Okay.
So we wanted to make it available to, our real fans. Like we don't have millions of them, but we have a handful that are out there, and we just wanted to make it available. We had the two albums that reverted back to us, uh, Reconciled and Into the Woods, that Elektra, that Warner Brothers had given back to us. And so we were able to remaster those. And we thought initially we were thinking that maybe just do the remastering. And if we had a couple of these songs, they'd be like bonus tracks. But, then when we came to realize we had 11 songs, we wanted to do that whole Lost Tapes album. So we just decided to make the whole thing initially available as the Kickstarter, so that those fans that are really into it would have, kind of the first chance to hear it and to get a hold of it and all that. So that's why we started out with the Kickstarter. And it's the thing about a Kickstarter these days is that, you're always, of course, doing vinyl. And, vinyl comes with the manufacturing delay, because it's taken, it's gotten better, but it was like 9 months out to get vinyl, pressed of a new record. I think they've got it down to about 3 months now. But so our Kickstarter will go for a few more weeks, probably. It'll probably start to wind down, because obviously it goes great guns at the beginning, and then it's all the people that are really into it get in there right away, and then it starts to taper off a little bit. So we'll go for probably a few more weeks on that and then let that go. But you can get the lost tapes as a download from the Kickstarter, so that people won't have to wait to hear it. They won't have to wait for like a vinyl.
So
You know,
where can they
pressing.
do that on your website?
The call has, it's the call band, the dash call dash band.com is the website. And I think you can just Google Kickstarter and type in the call or the lost tapes, and it should come up, I think, if you do
So
that.
people can go in there and take part of the Kickstarter campaign to help you.
Yeah, that'll be going for at least for a few more weeks, I think.
All right. And we'll put
Yeah.
a link on my Facebook and my website.
Yeah, because it's been going since I think it started January 9th. So what's today, the 25th? So that's been, yeah, it's been a couple of weeks, and and it's doing fine. Like we had a pretty low, I think you're supposed to have a goal amount that you're trying to get, and we basically just had to have a minimum that we knew we were going to have just to manufacture everything, and just to get it done, and to pay for the recording sessions and all that stuff that we did to get the album done. So the guys that put it together, they just put it out with basically a relatively low number that would just satisfy paying, so that we could kind of break even with what we had into it so far. And then it hit that goal like in the first day. And then it's been, adding a little bit as it goes. And like, I'm not ashamed to say, and I think Tom is going to agree with me that you know we had a lot of success with the people that we got to work with and the opportunities that we had, but we never made any money from the band really. And this for us is almost like an opportunity to just in our retirement just to make a little bit of money, because it was always, everybody else made money. It was either the distributors or the record
Mhm.
companies themselves, or the just the
Mhm.
promoters and the whoever. It's like everybody makes money except the band, if you're, at the level that we were at. And so yeah, we're hoping that we'll make a little bit of money, and we can take it, enjoy that as we as we ride off into the sunset.
So
But
this is a true DIY project.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You betcha. Our record company is five of us. So
Yeah.
that's our whole deal. I mean, that was the reason we had to do the Kickstarters. We didn't have any money and we wanted to make records. And so that really got us on our way. But we have had surprisingly great turnout on this Kickstarter, which, you know, it's just exciting, because in my mind, this thing's going to just explode. And I would love to maybe go out and play a few live gigs, which I think people would really dig.
Oh yeah. Do you have any like singers in mind?
We've got singers in mind, uh, but we're not jumping at anything yet. It's all kind of one of those things like, let's see what happens kind of a deal. And
That
then we'd
makes
start
sense.
really talking about that kind of stuff.
We'll
Wait,
see if we can get Jim Kerr from Simple Minds to go
oh yeah.
on with us.
Well, I knew also that, wasn't Peter Gabriel a big fan of you guys in the early days?
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. And he's still checked in occasionally through the years. But yeah, he got a hold of us early on. I think it was 1983, and said, "Hey, I really like you guys. How would you like to come and open for me in America, and then we'll take it to Europe?"
Oh wow.
And we said, "Sure, that's you betcha."
Yeah. Well, that was Larry, that my introduction to the band was uh they needed a keyboard player to go on the road to open for Peter Gabriel in Europe. And I had actually lived in France when I got out of high school. My mom worked for a foreign exchange program, and she got me hooked up with this deal where I was able to go to Paris, and I got to take saxophone lessons in Paris for a year,
Oh wow.
which is what I was really working on at the time. And so I'd been in Europe, and here I was, and they called me up and said, do you want to come in and audition? And I said, sure. And I went and I did audition, and I said, what are we going to be doing if I get the gig? And they said, well, we're going to go to Europe and open for Peter Gabriel. And Peter Gabriel, of course, at the time was one of my absolute superheroes. And I mean, I just couldn't believe it. I thought, man, I'm not going to get this gig. It's too good to be true. Like this kind of dream come true thing just doesn't happen in real life. But you start downplaying your expectations and everything when there's that much on the line. And then they called me up and said, hey, you got the gig. So we're going to fly up to Santa Cruz and start rehearsing, and then we're going. Like, in 10 days, we were in Europe opening for Peter Gabriel. And I just had to pinch myself. I couldn't believe it was happening, but
Peter did this really cool thing too for us. Is when we when we joined the tour, I remember the first gig. His crew guys would come up to us, and go, "Oh man, so I feel sorry for you guys because anybody that opens for Peter, especially in Europe, he's such an icon over here that usually they're not that nice to the opening bands. They might be yelling out Peter or something through the whole thing, or different things that people do when they don't care about opening bands. So I guess Peter kind of caught wind of this. I'm sure he was just aware of that and didn't want it to happen to us. So what he would do, this was the Shock the Monkey tour. And what he would do is he would come out right when we were ready to start in his kind of half monkey makeup. And he would stroll out on the stage. And of course, everybody in the auditorium would jump up to their feet and start clapping. And he just gave a little thing. And it was always when we were in Europe, he would do it in the local language, German or French or Italian, wherever we were. And he would come out, introduce us, and say, "This is one of my favorite bands. I want you to just dig on these guys." And he would walk off the stage, and everybody would be up clapping when we would start our first song. And so it eliminated all that kind of stuff. And they dug us, and it was really Peter that did that for us. It was just a sweet
yeah.
gesture on his part.
Yeah.
And I've never heard of that happening before, where the main act, that's
No.
fantastic. That's a really cool thing.
Well, the second half of that story is, I remember asking him one night about that. I said, I said, I can't imagine that there are many artists that would come out and do what you're doing for us. And like I said, I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. And he said, look, I'm not really doing it for you guys. I'm really doing it for myself. He said, because if I go out on stage and the audience has had this sort of animosity toward the opening act, and they're kind of in this slightly foul mood, he says it kind of ruins the first part of my show, because it takes them a minute to get out of that. And he said, this way they love you guys, and when I come out to do my show, the love fest has already started. And he said, and I can feel the difference. And I thought, wow, that is, man, okay, that's a guy who is really in tune with his vibe. Like it made sense to him. So he sort of laughed. He said, he said, I'm kind of doing it for myself, to be honest.
That's cool though.
And he really he set his audience up so well. He would do a song. I think it was called "Lay Your Hands on Me." And he would walk to the front of the stage. He would turn around and fall into the crowd. And he would have one of those little headset microphones on. So he's still singing the song. The song's playing away. The crowd would take him and surf him back to the back of the auditorium and then bring him all the way back down. He's still singing this whole song, and then just gently put him back on stage. And he did this night after night after night.
That's trust.
And I think
Yeah.
one time he lost a shoe. And that was it, for a whole month of doing that every night. And we'd go, we'd see him go out there and go, "Oh no, this time they're gonna drop him," or something. He'll come back with no pants on.
Well, we're talking with Tom and Jim from The Call. They have a new album out called The Lost Tapes. It's going to be out shortly. There's a Kickstarter campaign. I'll have all the details online here at klpx.com, or you can find it at the-call-band.com. Is that correct?
the-call-band.com. Yeah.
All right. So you can find it there as well, or Kickstarter, look up the Lost Tapes and the Call. Guys, I appreciate you checking in. I got one more thing that I'm going to bring up with you real quick is my Zoom is running out of time here, so I don't want it to cut off in the middle here.
And we'll talk all day.
I'd love to. This is fantastic. I'm a huge fan of you guys. I remember you guys did the tribute for Michael. I didn't get to go, but I saw the YouTube videos, and I'm also, and I had no idea at the time, I was a huge Black Rebel Motorcycle Club fan.
Yeah.
And I had heard Robert's version of Let the Day Begin. So, you know, he's got a different vocal style in BRMC than he does. But when I watched those YouTube videos of you guys at that tribute show, especially when he played Let the Day Begin, that's the one I wanted to check because I heard I think it was Black Rebel Motorcycle Club did their own version of that. And
Right.
it was more of his vocal style. But man, Genetics, he sounded like his dad.
Yeah.
It was spooky how much when I was listening I watched the concert online and I'm thinking, wow, I've heard that with Sting's kids. I've heard that with Lennon's. It's just, what was it like performing with his son?
Well, it was, you know, it was exactly kind of what you're saying. We knew we were in for something kind of special when we first went down to LA. That's where we rehearsed for this thing. And the three of us, Scotty and Jim and I, pulled into the studio parking lot. And Robert was standing outside against the door. And and since the last time we'd seen him, he'd grown a little beard and he had on his black leather jacket and he was just kind of standing there against the door, you know, kind of like this. And we go, oh, geez, you know, look at that. And a few of those times, you know, and I know Jim had that same kind of feeling when we were playing and you kind of look over at him and you just kind of sense this thing that, yeah, he was channeling his dad. And it's true. He uses a different kind of voice with the Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, and it was, you know, it was spiritual. It was inspiring, and you know, it took us quite a few days to come down after that. Those
E-
two gigs that we played.
Even
Yeah.
watching it years later on YouTube, it was like made the hair in my arm raise. And you know, I hope this really turns into something and that you guys actually go on the road and do some shows as the Call Again live because I would be there.
Maybe with Rob.
Yeah,
Yep,
maybe
That would,
maybe that'd be
that would
great.
be something.
And I know Todd Walsh should be there too. So hey, you know, and
Todd Walsh, you know, he came to both of the sessions. When we were putting this thing together, had Jim come in and play. He actually came to Sausalito where we started this thing, and then to Arizona where we finished the thing. And and of course he was there. You know, it's a giant smile on his face.
well, I'm sure. I got a big smile on my face talking to you guys because I got memories going back to seeing you back in the day. And, you know, I think the first time I ever heard you guys, I was a kid in high school. And when the walls came down on MTV.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, I like these guys. And it was my initiation into what would later on become known as alternative music. Or in my day, a couple of years later, was college music, you know, and
Yeah.
and I'm excited for the new album. I've been listening to it a lot, so thank you for sending it to me. And I'm going to be playing some stuff off of it. And I know, Jim, you already got the debut on your station. So, but I'll premiere it in Tucson on my station. So,
Absolutely. Plus, nobody listens to my station, so
oh, I'm sure they do. No, you know. So we're going to wrap things up again. If they want to go to the Kickstarter campaign, just look up the Call Kickstarter or the Call Lost Tapes Kickstarter or go to your website.
yeah, absolutely.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much, Jim and Tom from the Call, and hopefully we'll be seeing them live in concert again sometime. That'd be fantastic. And you guys can help with the information on that Kickstarter.
Thank you, Larry, very
Thanks
much.
thanks for all
Appreciate
your
it.
support, Larry.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Yeah.